Maritime trade through the Strait of Hormuz risks creating a ripple effect impacting humanitarian needs and agricultural production in the coming months. While the Secretary General is committed to making every effort to achieve a comprehensive and durable settlement of the conflict, immediate action is essential to mitigate these consequences. To address these challenges, the Secretary General has established a dedicated task force led by Undersecretary General Jorge Moreira da Silva, the Executive Director of UNOPS, the UN Office for Project Services. This task force will also include representatives from the UN Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, the International Maritime Organization, IMO, and the International Chamber of Commerce. Additional entities may be invited to participate as needed. The primary focus of this task force is to develop and propose technical mechanisms specifically designed to meet humanitarian needs in the Strait of Hormuz, drawing inspiration from relevant UN initiatives, including the UN Verification Inspection Monitoring Mechanism for Yemen, the Black Sea Grain Initiative, and the existing 2720 mechanism for Gaza. This new mechanism for the Strait of Hormuz aims to facilitate fertilizer trade, including the movements of raw materials. The mechanism's operationalization will be done in close consultation with relevant member states, with full respect for national sovereignty and established international legal frameworks. If successful, it would also create a confidence among member states on the diplomatic approach to the conflict and constitute a valuable step towards a wider political settlement. As part of his broader peacemaking mandate, the Secretary General's personal envoy, Jean Arnaud, will lead the political engagement with relevant member states, supported by members of the task force. And we've shared this announcement with you electronically right now. The Security Council this morning held close consultations concerning the ongoing attacks on civilian infrastructures in Iran, including educational and health facilities. Our Assistant Secretary General for Political and Peace Building Affairs, Khaled Kyari, briefed, as well as Gemma Connell on behalf of the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Turning to Lebanon, I want to reiterate our deep concern about the escalating rhetoric, the escalating hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah. The territorial integrity and sovereignty of Lebanon must be respected. The Lebanese government's authority to have the monopoly on the use of force and the use of arms throughout its territory must also be respected. Hezbollah must stop launching attacks into Israel, and Israel must stop its military operations and strikes in Lebanon, which are hitting civilians the hardest. As the Secretary General has said, the Gaza model must not be replicated in Lebanon. More than 1 million people are on the move in the country. That is 1 in 5 people in Lebanon. According to UNICEF, on average, 19,000 children are displaced every single day. Israeli civilians on the southern side of the Blue Line have also been impacted. There is simply no military solution to this conflict. We urge all sides to avail themselves of the diplomatic channels available to them and to recommit to the full implementation of Security Council Resolution 1701. Which is the agreed roadmap towards a permanent ceasefire and a long-term solution. Yesterday, our peacekeepers from UNIFIL reported over 200 rockets and artillery shells fired from the area of operations towards Israel. The mission detected 1,325 trajectories from the south to the north of the Blue Line. That is the highest number since March 2nd. Peacekeepers recorded a high volume of artillery exchanges in the area of operations and observed 16 airstrikes, including in Sector East and in Sector West. Amid the exchange of fire yesterday, a bullet also shattered a window at UNIFIL headquarters in Naqoura. An artillery shell impacting the vicinity of a UN position at Alcantara in Sector West also caused damage to buildings on the base. No injuries, thankfully, were reported. Once again, we reiterate that all sides must abide by their obligations to ensure the safety and security of UN personnel and premises. For their part, our humanitarian colleagues are continuing to scale up assistance in the country in close coordination with the government of Lebanon. Turning to the occupied Palestinian territory, our colleagues at the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs report that yesterday 2 people were killed in the West Bank, one by Israeli settlers near Bethlehem and the others by Israeli forces in the Kalandia camp near Jerusalem. Since the onset of the regional escalation last month, over 150 settler attacks have resulted in casualties or property damage in about 90 Palestinian communities, which is more than 6 attacks every day. Since January, such settler attacks and access restrictions have displaced nearly 1,700 Palestinians, less than 3 months into 2026. This number has already surpassed the total for the year 2025. OCHA tells us that since 2023, 38 Palestinian communities have been emptied of their populations. Our humanitarian organizations are assisting those who have been displaced. In the Gaza Strip, the humanitarian response is continuing despite persistent access restrictions, supply chain disruptions, and continued strikes. Yesterday, we and our partners offered services to 47 Palestinians who returned from Egypt to Rafah, through the Rafah crossing, The WHO and its partners supported the medical evacuation of 17 patients from Gaza, and they exited along with 30 of their caregivers. UNRWA delivered more than 13,000 primary health care consultations across 38 service points, and our colleagues at UNDP collected close to 2,000 cubic meters of solid waste and removed over 750 metric tons of debris. In addition, our colleagues at UNOPS brought fuel into Gaza to power critical services, which is needed because the electricity grid has been down for almost 30 months now. Kitchens supported by the World Food Program served about 1.5 million meals. The FAO distributed animal feed and cash to livestock herders to reduce reliance on food assistance, and they collected additional fodder from the Karim Shalom Abu Salam crossing to replenish their stocks. UNICEF also assisted in the delivery of about 3,500 cubic meters of drinking water via trucks. Meanwhile, OCHA also coordinated aid to displaced families whose tents were flooded by the recent rainstorms. Damage caused by rainfall impacted some 3,000 people, and UNICEF tells us that also impacted water services. Quick update from Myanmar, which we haven't talked about in a while. It's been a year since the earthquake hit that country. The World Food Program warns that communities struggling to rebuild are now being hit by the effects of the conflict in the Middle East. Rising fuel prices are pushing up the cost of moving food and agricultural goods, placing additional strain on households already struggling to afford basic staples. This crisis is also hitting Myanmar's farmers as they prepare their monsoon crops. With fertilizers demand expected to rise over the next 3 months, fuel shortages and rising input costs are threatening to push production expenses to double last year's levels. WFP says this is expected to hit hardest in conflict and earthquake-impacted areas such as Chin, Kachin, Kaya, Rakhine, Sagaing, and Shan states. It's expected to worsen food insecurity in a country already where 12.4 million human beings, nearly 1/4 of the population, are already facing acute hunger. WFP needs $150 million in funding this year to assist 1.5 million people across the country with life-saving assistance and resilience support. Without sufficient funding, our colleagues said they will be forced to prioritize the most urgent needs, potentially scaling back on recovery efforts that help earthquake survivors rebuild livelihoods and reduce long-term dependence on aid. Tomorrow from 8:30 to 9:30, what do we have? Earth Hour, New York time. And this year, Earth Hour marks its 20th anniversary. The Secretary General is inviting all to join millions who are turning off non-essential lights. In a message that we will issue tomorrow, he will note Earth Hour began as a simple gesture. It is now a global signal. People everywhere are calling for climate action. But it should be more than a shot in the dark, he says. Let it be a spark for change, a demand for faster emission cuts, a rapid and just transition from fossil fuels to renewables, and real support for communities already facing the worst impact. Edith.
Thank you, Steph. First, a follow-up on the announcement of the Secretary General's appointment of this task force to propose some kind of a mechanism. does he envision something similar to what was established during the Black Sea Grain Initiative, where ships would be registered and there would be some kind of inspections? And secondly, when you say that the task force will operate, quote, in close connection with member states, close quote, can we assume that that would include Iran, Israel, and the United States, the three key players?
All right. Well, first of all, what the Secretary General is announcing today is this task force. The operationalization is going to move forward. As mentioned, it is based on the past experiences we have, not only in the Black Sea, but also the verification inspection for Yemen, the registration mechanism that UNOPS, I believe, runs in Gaza. So we have a lot of experience on kind of these types of mechanisms in conflict zones. What exactly it will look like remains to be seen, because discussions will just start. I can tell you that over the last couple of days, the Secretary General has been on the phone with the Foreign Minister of Iran. I think he'll probably speak to the PR again today. He just spoke to Mike Waltz. He spoke to the Foreign Minister of Egypt. He spoke to the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, and also spoke to the permanent representative of Bahrain, and more calls will be taking place.
And no contact with the Israeli government in any way?
As more calls are had, I will share what information I can. Amélie and then Pam.
Thanks, Steph. A follow-up on that. I understand you said you're going to look into previous experiences, but for example, for the Black Sea Grain Initiative, the inspection were because there were accusations of the ships being militarized and used in the war, but we're not in the same context here. The oil, I mean, the ship carrying oil or fertilizer are not accused of participating in any kind of war. So how would you address that?
I think what needs to be clear, this is not about the shipments of oil, right, for commercial oil traffic. This is really focusing on how to alleviate the ongoing impact of this war. And I think you had the FAO representative here. We've had others talk about the immediate impact on people who have no connection to this conflict, right? The most vulnerable in the most vulnerable countries. At the same time, the Secretary General will continue to encourage the negotiations that we're seeing being reported on to see an end to this conflict. So we're able to do two things at the same time. And again, the task force will now be in touch with all the relevant member states to see how this can be operationalized. Pam.
Thank you, Steph. A little more on this mechanism. Do you foresee a UN Security Council resolution on this? No,
I think we're
not there yet.
We are not there yet. Obviously, it will be important to have the full backing of member states, and this is why the Secretary General is involved in consultations right now.
And if I understand it, this is a nose in the tent, so that, I mean, it's a partial movement.
What's a nose in the tent?
The camel, you know, it's a old
Can you try to find
adage.
some French thing? 'Cause I'm not very good with camels in tents.
This is, yeah, I guess. This
A
is
toe in the water?
No, it's a toe in the water.
Okay.
To a diplomatic solution to opening the strait that is start with fertilizer, and then it might be a UN mechanism.
The immediate focus is on getting, as I said, to meet humanitarian needs, focused on fertilizer and agricultural products, right? And as we said, if this is successful, and we very much hope it will be, and we hope that all member states involved will support this, especially for the sake of people, like I mentioned, in Myanmar, who are already being impacted, and we know what conditions they already live in, right? That this could also be a confidence building measure and can help the overall settlement of this conflict.
And the final one on this is just, is there any country, like there was Turkey for an operational thing that would be
I think
from the region?
all of that will be looked
Okay,
at.
thank you.
Nabil, and then we'll come back.
Thank you. So how important is it for Iran to be engaged and on board for this initiative to be
I mean, if you
successful?
look at your geography, I would say pretty critical.
And so I think you mean by calls with the Iranian foreign minister and the PR here that this was coordinated between the Secretary General and Iran? Was this coordinated?
This is an initiative of the Secretary General, and within the remit of the good offices of a Secretary General. And as part of that initiative, he is, of course, consulting with relevant member states.
And maybe last question, what is Hormuz Strait for the UN from a legal point of view? Is it an Iranian territory? Is it international?
From a legal point of view, it is international waters, and we need to see freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz.
So I'm just a bit fuzzy on, is this, so is this, the mechanism is already in place, like the idea of the mechanism is figured out, or is it an initiative and then they're trying to figure out how to make it operational?
We need to, we will work with relevant member states within the recognizing their sovereignty, international law, on how to operationalize this.
And who can basically secure the safe passages of ships and
this,
all? Because, there are some initiatives in the Security Council that
I mean, this is really focused on the humanitarian end, and we hope that all member states can at least agree that we need to mitigate the impacts of this conflict on the most vulnerable throughout the world. I mean, I think as the SG said to you Wednesday about the planting season, it's fertilizer. If we can't plant in the next few months, it'll have a ripple effect on hunger down the line.
And is the SG hoping, some country would step up and take, sort of maybe the lead, just like the example of Turkey with the Black Sea Initiative,
I think there'll be a lot of discussions going on. Vinny? Pam?
Thank you, Steph. There are reports that a nuclear facility in Iran was attacked this morning. Heavy water reactor.
Sorry, say again?
Heavy water reactor was struck by strikes this morning. So is the SG concerned that the strike may create radiation risk to Iran and to the whole region?
I think everyone should be concerned of strikes near or at any nuclear facilities. Yes, Edie.
Another follow-up. Is there any timetable for this task force to come up with recommendations?
Well, I mean, they've already done, there's already some work done, but that's internally. The critical bit now is going to be work with those member states involved.
And on the briefings to the Security Council this morning, is there any chance of getting any details on what the briefer said?
We will try, but I think, yes, we will try to see what we can get you. Okay, any more questions? Yes, go ahead.
Oh, just to confirm, so is it correct to understand that crude oil is not currently within the scope of this mandate?
That is very correct to say. Okay. Enjoy your Friday.